Yeah, thank you all for being here. Let's start big picture. All of you have seen AI projects that start with a lot of ambition and then quietly disappear. Why do so many AI projects still fail to reach production, Kristjan?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of reasons. Sometimes indeed they are technical, but I would say that's rarely the case. Mostly I think it's just organization and mindset issues, in a sense that when people finally understand, okay, this could work, but we would have to change the processes. We will also have to make changes to upstream and downstream, in a sense that, from somewhere data comes, and, we have to talk with them as well, so that they will change their developments as well. And also the downstream. So the AI system will actually produce some outputs that somebody has to use, and then you have to sync with them. So all of this is very complicated, and if you do not have the full buy-in of the management, then you can't get these things done, and that's why you need to involve them as often as possible.
Priit, what can you add?
First, I want to start that I really like it, this being the Estonian approach, getting straight to the point and getting deep into the topic. I think that there's a lack of perseverance in so many projects, AI or otherwise nowadays, because leaders are very much into new shiny things that are promised somewhere from somebody. So AI promises new shiny things really fast, and it can usually deliver the 80% really fast as well. But you need at least the kind of latter 10% to make it sustainable, to make it long-lasting. And this is what takes perseverance. It takes commitment to the strategy, and oftentimes this is missing, either due to changes in kind of political leadership, or some new shiny thing coming up and kind of grabbing all the attention, or just because that it takes a lot of struggle and effort to go that last 20%. But without that, these projects just, they cannot succeed. They're kind of meant to fail.
I would like to agree on the point of perseverance and kind of commitment. And if you're talking about the kind of business sector as such, then it is pretty clear like who are the winners and kind of successful businesses. Those are the companies who can instill the sense of ownership. And as Priit mentioned, it doesn't only apply to kind of AI projects, but pretty much any other project. If you don't have this sense of ownership, somebody kind of committing to this goal for kind of long time, then there is low likelihood of success, right? And it's probably a little bit trickier in the public sector to kind of instill this sense of ownership, right? There are some incentives and methods, but yeah, I would say that ownership is key here.
Right. Kristjan, you told me one big problem is that AI is often built as a standalone project, not as part of an organization-wide transformation. What's the consequence of that, and how do you fix it?
One big consequence is the fact that if you do them project-based, one thing is the issue that if there is the leadership isn't involved, then it just might die and just become a project, a pilot, and that's it. But another thing is that a lot of the AI approaches that you're going to use for one project could actually be used in many projects inside the organization, and you could actually reuse a lot of them. And this actually makes it much more efficient. For example, in one company, the process from the business side, it was 3 separate processes, but from an AI implementation perspective, it was actually one project. And you can take these sort of efficiencies if you think things through. And this is the case in many organizations. That's one of the consequences, and how to avoid this is that obviously you have to think strategically. So you should come up with an AI strategy, build that up, but that should also be very practical and short, because if you're gonna generate some 100+ page document, nobody's gonna read that. So you have to keep things short and doable, and have both a short-term and a long-term vision.
Priit, you've worked on digital government systems for years. Why is that even a separate category? So what are the fundamental differences compared to building enterprise software for large corporates, for example?
I think there's no difference in the end, and that gap is definitely closing as we see governments adopting more and more modern approaches, modern technologies. The theme has been that governments are sometimes slower to adopt new technologies, and that's not necessarily a wrong thing. It's a tactic for risk aversion, and it makes sense. You shouldn't be on the most the newest versions of everything and utilizing every new technology that comes out there. But just to add on your point, I think we need to get rid of the project mindset altogether. We shouldn't be talking at all about projects. And that doesn't apply only for AI utilization or AI projects, but also how we talk about services, government services. These should be products in so many different layers. And once we have that kind of product mentality and mindset, then it means these products have owners, they have purpose, goal, what they aim to achieve, and we can start managing them in that way. And AI can be seen just as a tool to do something for that product. But yeah, until we use AI adoption as project, let's bring in AI into this mix, then it's gonna be tough to sustain it in a long period of time.
That's a great point. Kaspar, coming from Wise and now Darkstar, you know what it takes to bring models into production at scale. What's the biggest difference from your point of view between scaling AI in the private sector versus the public one?
It's a good question. I would say this is mostly like organizational differences as well. I'm not sure if, like what Priit mentioned, that it's kind of the tactical decisions such that the government decides to do something slower. I think it's the inherent difference in the organizational structure where kind of, well, yes, there are some governmental units and organizations who are more agile and trying to kind of replicate some of the kind of startup mentality. Like, let me bring another example from the military domain right now in Ukraine. For an example, a lot of the kind of brigades and battalions are operating as startups, and this brings them, they have their own recruitment, their own kind of branding, their kind of KPIs, kind of the startup mentality, because the soldiers there right now are ex-entrepreneurs, ex-engineers, etc. So we see this kind of replicating this startup mentality or agility, etc., in kind of more military or governmental structures also brings about those kind of benefits to the kind of organizational structure, which kind of then allows to move faster as well and kind of increases this organizational velocity. So I think, yeah, did this answer the question?
Yeah. You mentioned military now, and just for those who don't know Darkstar, maybe you can tell us in a nutshell what it is about.
We have a simple mission to help Ukraine win and to help rearm Europe, and we are helping that through basically linking different companies, different militaries together. We are kind of bringing military tech to Estonia, etc. So we're working with governmental institutions, with military institutions, with companies, etc. And yeah, we have this investment fund as well. So yeah, we have one clear mission, one goal. Defend Europe, essentially.
So one part of it is a venture fund, the classical one.
Yeah, the venture fund is something that kind of powers all of our activities, right? Mm-hmm. Keeps us alive.
Great. Kristjan, I think almost everyone here has seen this in their own country. After the launch of ChatGPT, many companies quickly caught the wave of excitement about AI. But in most government agencies, the first reaction was a ban. Not without reason, of course. Still, it looks like many missed the momentum. Are governments playing it too safe sometimes? What do you think?
Yes, is the short answer. But it's not only about ChatGPT, but in general, because if you wish to use AI, not only ChatGPT, but digital transformation actually as well. If you want to actually use AI, then you have to accept the fact that, okay, it's a continuous process. I'm going to have to change how people work. What's the mindset? I'm going to have to get rid of quite a lot of people as well, because they're just not going to be compatible in this system. And it's a continuous improvement of seeing, okay, this works, this doesn't. Let's make changes. Let's make adjustments to the process. It's going to be hard, but it's doable. I mean, I have seen cases where, if there is a will, they can even make, legislative changes in a couple of months. But if there is not, then, nothing might happen. It's very easy to say, no, let's not do it. So yeah, I think a lot of them are playing it too safe and, under-investing and, not pushing basically for the change because, it's a bit nicer not to do things, but it's going to be hard, but necessary to innovate.
And do you have any suggestion how to catch such a momentum?
I think on some level you just have to make some personal changes. I don't think there's any way around that part as well. I'm sorry for those who do not wish to make that change. But also just the, we have seen, for example, AI work groups be very effective. So in the organization, you have a AI work group which basically continuously, at least on a monthly basis, monitors how the AI initiatives are moving forward and what kind of support do they need. Because they do need support. They need technical support. They need, top management decisions. Okay, yes, we are supporting this decision. Go ahead with this. If somebody bothers you, then tell them that this has the management buy-in, and then things do happen.
Do you want to add something?
I have some thoughts here as well. I think ChatGPT didn't get banned in Italy for nothing. It was this major privacy breach like some years ago, and it was kind of temporary as well. But that also kind of like destroyed quite a bit of trust. But there are some other examples as well. Just recently, Deloitte had to refund, I don't remember which government it was that it was consulting, because there were literal factual errors in that kind of AI generated report that Deloitte kind of generated. So I would say, like, and I'm also actually happen to be director of engineering at WISE, have been implementing machine learning and LLMs, etc. And like we also, how we think about governance, we are also working really closely with legal compliance and privacy, and all those are serious issues, right? So if we, I don't know, deny a service for 50,000 customers because, I don't know, there is some small little bug in some AI system somewhere, then we need to have some kind of guardrails and kind of compliance there, but also it's a very thin line of balance, like what is kind of like what's too much compliance and where we're going a bit kind of like overkill with something and misinterpreting some things that aren't really there and kind of like building too much of this red tape. So keeping this balance is really, really tough. And we will see more incidents, governments making mistakes, businesses making mistakes, etc. And it just comes with it. We need to kind of accept and be more kind of, accepting and tolerant to kind of risk.
Yeah, thank you for adding that perspective. Priit, how do you balance speed and safety when building for government, where, one single failure can make everyone risk-averse for years?
So there's a couple of really simple and basic tactics. So first, at this time, it's not possible to take human out of the loop. So every meaningful, significant decision has to be backed by a human decision. You can have AI doing the decision aid on top of that, providing additional context information, but the final decision has to come from the human, regardless if that human is the user itself or some government official. Another kind of crucial aspect is that it is very difficult to do AI projects in kind of waterfall style, in an old school style, where you plan out everything beforehand and then start doing it. Even if you have if you set a business goal that you want the AI project to achieve and then start going, you will most probably discover something new on the way. You will discover that either there are 3 other problems that this solution can solve much better, or the original problem isn't the most important problem at all to solve. So the process needs to be adaptable. You need to change, be able to change along the way. And oftentimes, government procurements don't permit such adaptability. So they procure a very specific solution. You are required to deploy that solution, be it the correct one or not. And that's kind of a challenge on both sides, on enterprise as well as on public sector side, how to design procurements in a way that this sort of adaptability is permitted within the process.
Yeah, I will just add that I've seen some very bad examples where, for example, you build an AI system and everybody knows that solving something in a way that was in the initial documents doesn't make any sense, but they still do it. Because otherwise, some EU auditor is going to come and ask for their money back, at least potentially. And people are afraid of this, and this really messes things up. And there needs to be some flexibility in this process, and it's also good if you leave this flexibility in from the start.
Very strongly agree, and it doesn't apply to just AI procurement, but every procurement, including military. And this is not a problem only in kind of EU. Let me bring like a really interesting example where this also means life and death, and might happen soon here as well. But in Ukraine, for example, there was a procurement for like before the incursion in Kursk. Jammers producers was also given this really specific requirements and parameters what their jammers need to kind of what frequency ranges, etc. they need to cover. The producers already knew that in 6 months' time it will be irrelevant, but they needed to produce and kind of comply with the spec anyway to get the money. So faulty jammers were sent to Kursk. Some people died within 24 hours, retrofitted because they had kind of already prepared like how to retrofit this. But this is something that will also start to kind of like when those procurement kind of inflexibility and kind of this inambiguity can also result in kind of life and death. In these situations, maybe not, and maybe it's kind of more friction, kind of waste and kind of cost and etc. that it causes. But in some situations, it can also result in life and death.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. AI models evolve fast, defense and public services move slow. So do governments, especially in defense, need to completely rethink their procurement processes? Not completely rethink, but definitely kind of think how to make them a lot shorter, a lot more kind of frequent, and etc. And maybe I know there are a couple of working groups working on this as well, and it's a pretty tough problem, and it's not for one person or one kind of interest group to solve, but this is one of the biggest problems right now, also in defense and, well, in AI as well. How do you see it, Kristjan?
Things have gotten a lot better. We have seen, this waterfall method becoming, not forgotten about, but used less often, and more flexibility and agility is left in. But it's definitely still there. And I think a lot of the times people who would like to make this change, they do not have the power to make the change because this is coming from somewhere higher. And they do not know how to influence those decisions, basically. Kaspar, I used to cover the defense sector in Germany as a reporter, where failure isn't an option, it's almost a cultural rule. But in countries actually under attack, it's different. Roy Rechnik, a former cyber soldier in Israel and co-founder of the cybersecurity company WIS, recently told me in an interview something like, sometimes done is better than perfect, and that you just have to accomplish the mission. So what doctrine should governments follow when it comes to tech and software for defense in times of war and geopolitical crisis?
Sorry, could you repeat the last bit of the question?
So what doctrine should governments follow when it comes to tech and software for defense?
There are some really interesting developments going on in kind of doctrinal innovation here in Estonia as well, and in general as well, led by Tartu University and Dr. Mart Noorma and my colleague from Darkstar as well, and some ex-colonels and other people. They actually covered this like a little bit yesterday. There was like another conference in the Riigikogu, the change doesn't only come from technology, but also from kind of the changes in kind of or new applications of concept of operations, and kind of if you translate this into a business context, then it's basically we need to change or rethink the processes, right? So I cannot tell because I don't know what are the exact doctrinal changes that we need, but essentially, if we were kind of in the past used to think of kind of like daytime convoys and kind of large-scale kind of groups and kind of infantry attacks and kind of other types of tanks and etc., then this has kind of long changed, and this is kind of like an indication of a doctrinal change as well. And we are seeing examples of that, by having kind of included Ukrainian soldiers in military exercises. Just 20 soldiers can basically demonstrate how we can obliterate complete battalions.
So does one of you know? So what kind of doctrine should government have for this kind of procurement?
Well, the sure thing is that a lot needs to change. So if you want to, if we talk about AI adoption and kind of the utilization of to get the best possible value out of AI, you need to change the underlying structures, not including the processes, but also potentially organizational structures. And we are seeing that very much in the software engineering industry, where teams are talking about changing the software architecture to accommodate the new workflows of that AI enables. So to get the acceleration from AI, they're changing the underlying foundational structures of the software itself to get the best possible benefit. And I think this will eventually kind of get into other domains as well, to get the biggest possible benefit from this new technology. The underlying structures are going to change or need to change. So kind of the change or the shift needs to be on the very foundational level. We need to essentially forget everything we've used to so far and then start reimagining what sort of processes and principles to follow.
Kristjan, especially since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the problem hasn't been good intentions. It's implementation. So how do you make sure a strategy for the AI era doesn't just stay on paper?
Could you maybe...
Yeah, I mean, there are good intentions to speed things up with procurement, with integration of AI tools to be more sovereign and so far, but often this is the strategy and then nothing follows.
Okay, in that, I mean, there's a lot of nice words. Let's become AI-driven and let's do AI. But you know, I've seen many times where in the same organizations actually nothing gets done, which is sad. So you know, I think there also needs to be a push from everyone so that they will actually act on this, because you know that's always the way to go. But I think they also have to be given some tools to actually enable this, in a sense that you know, you have to help them with some sort of a framework. For example, if the public sector says like, hey, if somebody wishes to actually become AI-driven, this is how you do it. These are the logical steps. For example, there needs to be money and budget to run very easy tests. Then from testing to go to pilots, and then from pilots to actually fully productized AI-powered services. If this sort of a logic doesn't exist from the public sector side, then at some point the organizations are also like tied. They can't really do things, although they might have good intentions. Yes, there are some good organizations who find the methods and budgets anyways, but for many others, you have to create this framework and funding logic so that they will actually execute. And it is coming there, I think, in many places, but definitely not anywhere. And I think people are also just scared because of these AI acts and these kind of things, because maybe in practice, if you think things through, these kind of AI acts and things, they are not that hard, but people are just scared of them, and this takes down the speed of things actually happening, and while the benefits are a bit questionable of it. So you have to make at some point the selection between the speed versus bureaucracy.
You wanted to add something, Kaspar?
I wanted to add that change will always be slow unless it's some crisis or a shock. For an example, COVID forced like really fast change, right? And for a kind of like serious changes, fundamental changes to happen, likely it will be some shocks or some crisis that will kind of trigger this. Like, I don't know, for an example, we losing en masse some competitiveness, for an example. We're simply unable to compete, or like, I don't know, tens of thousands of people suddenly like losing a job, like some shocks happening somewhere, or simply put war as well, right? It's just another type of shock.
Yeah, I mean, I think one shock is just demographics, because I know many organizations who are like, okay, now we finally have to use AI because I have nobody to employ, or at least not the amount of people I would need. This is like a very slow shock, but it's definitely also a shock. So I do agree, because sometimes that's what works.
Priit, Estonia is famous for its digital architecture, and you're known as one of the masterminds behind it. What's the secret? Technology, leadership, or mindset, and what can others learn from it?
One of the strengths for sure in Estonia has been to start with the value in mind. So not building something for the purpose of just building it, but to identify what's the value for end users. And many of the innovations that you learn from digital government in Estonia have started from the value. So once you display or present value to end users, they will start adopting it more and more. And the adoption cannot come from the fact that just government wants to do something. We're seeing that globally as well. Like if we take the digital identity scheme in UK, for example, it feels very much forced, and there's strong opposition against that. And Estonia, it started differently. It was just, there's something out there that creates value for you, and if you want, you can use it. This is why people are using social media so much, because it provides them this emotional value at certain points in time. This is why they do it. Although we all know what sort of trickery social media platforms are doing with our data, but we still consent for them to process that data. And I think another aspect that I want to bring out is the ambition for innovation. So although Estonia is very much known for their digital government, it doesn't stop there. We are already thinking about what the next generation government services looks like, how the AI kind of changes everything in this concept. Because AI is anyway going to be used in the world around us. Now the question is, do the government services remain the same? Do they remain intact, or they adapt to the situation and become more usable by the AI agents around us? So do they do they fit into the future? I think that's the question. And then what Estonia is doing is always thinking about what the future is going to look like and trying to fit to that future.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to involve the audience here. Is there someone who has a question? Is to be asked. Here's a question in the second row. We make sure that you get a microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Kaspar Gering from Darkstar. You mentioned there's only a thin line between too much compliance and too little. And then you described how it can be a matter of life and death. Now, I assume that on the battlefield you have a larger risk appetite than in civilian life that most governments are looking at. Are governments already sufficiently equipped to do just the right amount of compliance? Do those technical tools and protocols and instruments already exist? Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mean in war context?
No, outside war context. I understand that in a war context you can't wait for full compliance. But most life outside of Ukraine, unfortunately, is not on the battlefield. And do we have the tools to do just enough compliance already? Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is primarily an engineering question. Engineer and like collaboration between engineering and privacy and legal and compliance. And I think we do have enough tools, but I think we are also still learning kind of what do effective controls mean, because the pace and the speed at which kind of the risks and security risks and privacy risks are also evolving, new types of vulnerabilities and new, like now there's like model control protocols and new means of exchanging information and new vulnerabilities there, etc. Like the scope and the kind of breadth of kind of those security and kind of privacy risk is also kind of ever expanding, right? We have the tools, but they're kind of evolving, and I think they might be evolving a little bit slower than the risks themselves. But I would like to return to the, into the war context. I think this is super important there as well, because the ethical kind of guardrails and kind of frameworks apply there as well, right? So you still need some compliance kind of guardrails to, you still need human in the loop to make this final decision, right? So maybe not in Russia because they're a terrorist state and they don't care, they don't have ethics. But in the rest of the kind of civil world, we do need those kind of frameworks and ethical frameworks, etc. And we have already kind of, those frameworks exist by UN and other kind of bodies who kind of produce standards, etc. So, yeah, did I answer your question, or it was a little bit vague?
I want to pitch in to that, maybe more on a civil side, not from the war front. I think the answer is no, and that's because yes, I agree that tooling is there, but the processes and the attention to underlying data is often not there, and this is very much lacking. So you can't do proper compliance, you can't do proper AI projects on top of incorrect or partial data, and you cannot do compliance on top of that either. If the data streams are not proper and the data is not cared for the same way as we do care for kind of products in our ecosystem, then it doesn't matter how much you try to do compliance. You never be on par. And there's so many aspects, not only talking about data quality, but metadata around data, the taxonomies on top of that, talking about bias analysis and understanding what's there. Utilizing AI on top of your existing data requires all different types of requirements, puts a different level of requirement on that data. And that's where the gap is oftentimes.
I would like to add here, I agree completely with this as well. And now we will likely see kind of those types of roles emerging, which are kind of bridging more of kind of those technical aspects, but also more of kind of the legal and kind of the compliance aspects, right? So, because we cannot rely, like an organization cannot rely on a non-technical person dictating like how things can be, and vice versa. This technical person needs to also go the extra mile to try and understand, what is the aim of this, I don't know, this particular paragraph in this regulation, right? So there needs to be some bridging, so both need to kind of meet somewhere.
Yeah, thank you for your joint efforts to answer that question. We have time for one additional question from the audience. Perfect.
Thank you. For Kaspar also, small countries and their military forces, normally they have few resources and small resources for defense, and technology costs a lot. Then sometimes it's really hard to enter in some kind of technology. But also, one of the aspects that make it harder is the fears, the unknowledge, the misunderstanding of how it works, especially now the artificial intelligence. What can you say that could be these guidelines to break these misunderstanding, these fears to enter in these kind of technologies?
If I understood the question correct, well, let me try to answer and let's see if I understood the question correct. So, as a small country, definitely we need to leverage each human's potential to the max. So, in every sector, and a prime example from the military sector, every soldier needs to be able to control hundreds of unmanned assets, UAVs, UGVs, like you name it, right? So, and we need to have a kind of multi-layered kind of robotic defense lines so that the enemy wouldn't even, have contact with humans at all. And humans would be somewhere remotely operating somewhere, right? But we need to also leverage all of those human potential in every other sector as well, in the public sector and kind of the businesses as well. And this is how we can kind of compete with larger powers in that sense. And I think the benefits of a small country is kind of if you make a parallel between like a cruise ship and a speedboat. So Estonia or other small countries, or predominantly Estonia, is like a speedboat who can navigate and kind of move pretty fast in kind of implementing new stuff. In Estonia, we have now a new kind of innovation command in the military, force transformation command, whose job is exactly to kind of bring this new technologies, knowledge, kind of hiring the talent and etc. to kind of propagate this kind of new types of technologies and thinking into every military unit, right? And interestingly enough, there aren't many innovation commands in the world. Yes, there are in Japan, in UK, Switzerland has the Swiss Innovation Forces, which is actually kind of like a governmental and business body. But I think, that's the advantage of small countries, that they can move fast and kind of adapt, try, experiment, explore, see what works, what doesn't. But again, they need to accept some risk as well and be not afraid to fail while doing that. So that's why we also have already some exploratory budgets, etc. And we need to instill this mindset to kind of everybody that it's okay to fail. You won't get fired.
Thank you. So our time is almost up. I have one final question for all three of you. Please keep it short. If you had to give one piece of advice to any government trying to scale AI from strategy to production, what would it be?
That it needs to be an organization-wide transformation which doesn't only go for projects, but has a product mindset and organization-wide transformation mindset, and prepared for change, because there's always going to be some new things that come up, and you have to adapt, you have to collaborate, and you have to keep everyone involved, not only the project people, but people who are connected to the project otherwise as well, and definitely the management buy-in needs to be there.
So my recommendation is just stay on the train, because we're talking today about scaling AI, but AI will scale anyway. We just need to figure out how do we fit our services into this mix. So even today, ChatGPT can go and browse pages. Why not? Why it shouldn't be able to browse government portals, submit applications on my behalf? But are those government portals really up for the challenge at this time, or are they missing some crucial information for an agent to do that? So AI is going to scale anyway, but are we ready for it?
And from my side, just continue doing what you do, because I see some really positive transformations happening right now in the education and elsewhere as well, and what you guys are doing and etc. So, yeah.
Perfect. That's all the time we have. We will have lunch in a minute, and program at the innovation stage will start again at 2:15. So thank you, Kristjan, Priit, and Kaspar, and thanks to all of you for joining us.